the Fifth Lateran Council was called in 1511 by Pope Julius II to deal with the schismatic Council of Pisa that had the support of the French king, Louis XII. The council also had to deal with the pragmatic sanction of Bourges issued by the French king, Charles VII, which attempted to implement in France the conciliarist heresy from the Council of Basel. With the death of Pope Julius II, the council reconvened under Pope Leo X and closed in March 1517. Not very soon after that date, in the fall of 1517, Martin Luther proposed his 95 Theses, which ignited the Protestant revolt. It is interesting to note that the Lateran Council tried to answer many of the questions raised by Martin Luther. Luther was outraged by the preaching of indulgences by the Dominican friar Tetzel, and the Fifth Lateran Council addressed this abuse of preaching in Session 10. Luther also called for a council to supersede his condemnation by the Pope. Since Martin Luther was an academic, he would have been familiar with the conciliarist heresy. The other issue was the reform of the College of Cardinals and their luxurious lifestyles, which was another issue of Luther's revolt. Also, another issue dealt with by the council was the invention of the movable type printing press, which made books and pamphlets more readily available to the public. One of the success factors to Martin Luther's revolt was his ability to quickly disseminate his ideas. The documents of the council were simply too little, too late to stop the tide of the revolt.
Session 2, May 17, 1512. Accordingly, in this second session lawfully assembled in the Holy Spirit, after mature deliberation held by us, with our venerable brothers, the cardinals of the Holy Roman Church, by the advice and unanimous consent of the same brothers, from sure knowledge and by the fullness of apostolic power, we confirm, approve, and renew, with the approval of the Sacred Council, the rejections, condemnations, revocations, quashings, invalidations, and annulments of the summoning, convoking, and public utterances of that schismatic assembly, the vaunted quasi-council of Pisa. Session 4, December 10, 1512. Moreover, for considerable periods of time, there has been great disparagement of the Apostolic See, and of the head, the liberty, and the authority of the Holy Roman Universal Church, as well as the limitation of the sacred canons, by a number of the prelates of the French nation and by noble laymen and others supporting them, especially under pretext of a certain sanction, which they call the pragmatic. We do not wish to endure further a thing so pernicious and offensive to God, a clear cheapening of and damage to the said church. For it is only in those regions that the sanction, carried out by those lacking all lawful power for that end, and without the authority of popes or legitimate general councils, has been introduced and observed by way of an abuse. It must be rightly, along with its contents, be declared null and void and be repealed. Session 5, February 16, 1513. We therefore regard it as suitable and salutary that, in the election of the said pontiff, in order that the faithful may look upon him as a mirror of purity and honesty, all stain and every trace of simony shall be absent, that men shall be raised up for this burdensome office who, having embarked in the appropriate manner and order in a due, right, and canonical way, may undertake the steering of the bark of Peter and may be, once established in so lofty a dignity, a support for right and good people and a terror for evil people, that by their example, the rest of the faithful may receive instruction on good behavior and be directed in the way of salvation. Session 8, December 19, 1513. With the approval of the Sacred Council, we condemn and reject all those who insist that the intellectual soul is mortal, or that it is only one among all human beings, and those who suggest doubts on this topic, for the soul not only truly exists of itself, and essentially as a form of the human body, as is said in the canon of our predecessor of happy memory, Pope Clement V, and promulgated in the General Council of Vienne, but it is also immortal, and further, for the enormous number of bodies into which it is infused individually, it can and ought to be and is multiplied. Session 8, December 19, 1513. For in the previous 7th session, the Council was confronting, among other matters, the threatening and very obvious danger from the infidels, and the spilling of Christian blood, which even then was being poured out because of our blatant faults. The quarrels between Christian kings and princes and peoples must also be removed, and we were being compelled to seek with all our strength for peace between them. This was the reason for having to arrange one of the more important meetings of the said council, so that peace should follow and be maintained as unbroken, and leading to its due fulfillment, especially in these times when the power of the infidels is recognized to have grown to a remarkable extent. Session 9, May 5, 1514. since the cardinals of the Holy Roman Church take precedence in honor and dignity over all the other members of the Church after the sovereign pontiff, it is proper and right that they be distinguished beyond all others by the purity of their life and the excellence of their virtues. In the first place, let him honor God by his works. Let all of them be vigilant, constant at the divine office and the celebration of masses, and maintain their chapels in a worthy place. Their house and establishment, table and furniture, should not attract blame by display or splendor or superfluous equipment or in any other way, so as to avoid any fostering of sin or excess, but, as is right, let them deserve to be called mirrors of moderation and frugality. Session 9, May 5th, 1514. We lay down that no cardinal may reveal in writing or by word or in any other way, under pain of being a perjurer and disobedient, the votes that were given in the consistory, or whatever was done or said there, which could result in hatred or scandal or prejudice with regard to anyone, or whenever silence on any point beyond the foregoing has been specially and clearly enjoined by ourself or the Roman pontiff of the time. If anyone acts to the contrary, he incurs, as well as the punishment stated, immediate excommunication, from which, except in immediate danger of death, he can only be absolved by ourself or the Roman pontiff of the time, and with a declaration of the reason. Session 9, May 5th, 1514. To wipe out the curse of blasphemy, which has increased beyond measure, towards a supreme contempt for the divine name and for the saints, we rule and ordain that whoever curses God openly and publicly, and by insulting and offensive language, has expressly blasphemed our Lord Jesus Christ, or the glorious Virgin Mary, his mother, if he has held a public office or jurisdiction, he is to lose 3 months' emoluments of his said office for the first and second offense. And if he has committed the fault a third time, he is automatically deprived of his post. If he is a cleric or a priest, he is to be punished further. Session 10, May 4th, 1515. Since, therefore, this whole question appears to concern the peace and tranquility of the whole Christian state, we declare and define, with the approval of the Sacred Council, that the above-mentioned credit organizations, established by states and hitherto approved and confirmed by the authority of the Apostolic See, do not introduce any kind of evil or provide any incentive to sin. If they receive, in addition to the capital, a moderate sum for their expenses, and by way of compensation, provided it is intended exclusively to defray the expenses of those employed and of other things pertaining, as mentioned, to the upkeep of the organizations, and provided that no profit is made therefrom, they ought not, indeed, to be condemned in any way. Rather, such a type of lending is meritorious and should be praised and approved. It certainly should not be considered as usurious. Session 10, May 4th, 1515. It is certainly possible to obtain without difficulty some learning by reading books. The skill of book printing has been invented, or rather improved and perfected, with God's assistance, particularly in our time. Without doubt it has brought many benefits to men and women, since at small expense, it is possible to possess a great number of books. Complaints from many persons, however, have reached our ears, and those of the Apostolic See. In fact, some printers have the boldness to print and sell to the public, in different parts of the world, books containing errors opposed to the faith. The readers are not edified. Indeed, they lapse into very great errors, not only in the realm of faith, but also in that of life and morals. This has often given rise to various scandals, as experience has taught, and there is daily the fear that even greater scandals are developing. We therefore establish and ordain that henceforth and for all future time, no one may dare to print or have printed any book or other writing of whatever kind in Rome or in any other cities and dioceses, without the book or writings having first been closely examined at Rome by our vicar and the master of the sacred palace, or in other cities and dioceses by the bishop or some other person who knows about the printing of books and writings of this kind. Session 10, May 4th, 1515. The fact that the sanction and its contents were published at the Council of Basel and, at the instance of the same council, were received and recognized by the meeting at Bourges, ought not to influence us, since all those happenings after the transfer of the same Council of Basel took place. The transfer being made by Pope Eugenius IV, our predecessor of happy memory, have remained the deeds of the quasi-council. Therefore, we revoke, make void, abrogate, quash, annul, and condemn that same sanction or corruption of Bourges, and its approval, whether expressed or tacit as said above, as well as each and everything of whatever nature included, or even inserted in it, and we judge, declare, and will them to be considered as of no effect, revoked, made void, abrogated, quashed, annulled, and condemned. Session 10, May 4th, 1515. When these preachers spread this medley of fraud and error, backed by the false testimony of alleged miracles, the congregations whom they ought to be carefully instructing in the gospel message, and retaining and preserving in the true faith, are withdrawn by their sermons from the teaching and commands of the universal church. When they turn aside from the official sacred teachings, which they ought particularly to follow, they separate and move far from salvation those who listen to them. For, as a result of these and similar activities, the less educated people, as being more exposed to deceit, are very easily led into manifold errors as they wander from the path of salvation and from obedience to the Roman Church. Gregory, therefore, who was outstanding in this task, moved by the warmth of his charity, gave a strong exhortation and warning to preachers that when about to speak, they approach the people with prudence and caution, lest, caught up in the enthusiasm of their oratory, they entangle the hearts of their hearers with verbal errors, as if with nooses, and while perhaps they wish to appear wise, in their delusion, they foolishly tear asunder the sinews of the hope for virtue. For the meaning of words is often lost when the hearts of the audience are bruised by too urgent and careless forms of speech.